And who ever heard of such a thing?
Proposition 1, yay!
But we're hoping that Carol and Ellen can give us some solutions or some ideas.
They've got the good news.
How we can move forward. Things
We
that
come
can
to
do.
bring hope.
I'm Ellen Thomas, and I live in Tryon now. For 25 years I lived in Washington, D.C., and 18 of those years I was out in front of the White House working for global nuclear disarmament. I don't know if you heard about the woman who died in January, Concepcion Picciotto. She was a colleague of mine. And the vigil is still continuing as we speak now, quite amazingly.
A little more
They're, yes, I'm sorry, people tell me they can't hear me. I can hear me. So, Carol Urner recruited me into Women's International League for Peace and Freedom about 10 years ago, and quickly made me a co-chair of the Disarm and Wars Committee. And I'm glad that I did. It's a wonderful organization, and if you're not familiar with it, it's a 101-year-old organization that has been working for peace on earth ever since 1915. And there are branches all over the country, and there are, how many countries that are have members?
I think now it's about 36.
Yeah.
It goes up and
all over
down.
the world.
But a lot more in what we call the global south now. A lot of what we used to call third world countries. And that's exciting for us.
Yeah.
Because that's where a lot of the problem, the people who suffer the most from this.
So the branches are, well, Asheville had a branch at one point, and the branches are autonomous, loosely connected to the national. But there are program committees that are groups of people that live all over the country who call in once a month and talk to each other and strategize, learn from each other, and figure out campaigns that they can work on and help each other. It's a really good organization. And I've got some information here about it in case anybody wants to know more or wants to join it. But
And men can join.
and
too.
oh, it's for everybody. Yeah, we love men.
We love you. We love you.
So while we were out in front of the White House, we started circulating a petition to abolish nuclear weapons, actually asking our representative or our delegate to introduce legislation. And it was similar to what I'm going to pass around here. And if you would like more information about what we talk about, put your contact information there, your email and so forth, so that we can read it and make sure we can get through to you. But we got thousands and hundreds of thousands of signatures on the petition over a number of years. And I would personally go up on Capitol Hill and hand deliver a copy of the petition and show them the stack that was ever growing. And nobody ever introduced it. So there was a fellow who showed up in 1990 who had been part of the, or 92, 91, anyway, somewhere around there, who had been part of the Impeach Governor Meekum campaign. Governor Meekum of Arizona had been refusing to acknowledge the Martin Luther King holiday. And the people at the state got mad at him and they got rid of him. So Joe Vigorito shows up and he says, well, you need to do a voter initiative. And he was right, and we did. We started it right before the first Gulf War started, and had to stop because we were out beating on drums for 40 days and 40 nights and didn't have time to collect signatures. But then we restarted it again afterwards, won the election, much to the surprise of everybody, and overwhelmingly won the election. Red Moonsong was part of that campaign. And as a result, Eleanor Holmes Norton of Washington, D.C. has reintroduced the Nuclear Weapons Abolition and Economic and Energy Conversion Act 12 times. And this is a copy of the bill on one side and the letter that she has written to her colleagues, but not sent, and I'll explain that, asking them to please co-sponsor the bill. So far, we just have 2 co-sponsors. Raul Grijalva of Arizona, who is co-chair of the Progressive Caucus, and John Lewis of Georgia, who has signed on every session since he first found out about it, or almost every session. Dennis Kucinich signed on after he didn't want to be president anymore. And a number of other representatives have signed on. And we feel like this year, it's an issue that is ready to be talked about. You know, Iran, what happened with Iran was very scary. What happened with Ukraine and Syria is very scary. And Russia is backing away, and it's a scary time. And so therefore, people might be more aggressively interested in asking their representatives to co-sponsor this bill. And I want to go over it with you briefly. The United States government shall provide leadership to negotiate and enter into a multilateral treaty or other international agreement that provides for the dismantlement and elimination of all nuclear weapons in every country by not later than 2022, under strict and effective international control, and redirect resources that are being used for nuclear weapons programs to use A, in converting all nuclear weapons industry employees, processes, plants, and programs smoothly to constructive, ecologically beneficial peacetime activities, including strict control of all fissile materials and radioactive waste during the period in which the nuclear weapons must be dismantled. And B, in addressing human and infrastructure needs, including development and deployment of sustainable, carbon-free and nuclear-free energy sources, healthcare, housing, education, agriculture, and environmental restoration, including long-term radioactive waste monitoring. Number 3 is undertake vigorous good faith efforts to eliminate war, armed conflict, and all military operations. And the key words here are good faith, because these governments say that's what they want, but that's not how they act. And 4, actively promote policies to induce all other countries to join these commitments, and that doesn't mean regime change and invasion and sanctions and telling other people what to do. It means being helpful and being good neighbors. The effective date, it goes into effect when the President certifies to Congress that all countries possessing nuclear weapons, it used to have just the first one here, have eliminated such weapons. And we talked Ms. Norton into adding the second clause, which says, or begun such elimination under established legal requirements that are talked about earlier. So it's a very broad and very concise description of how we want things to go. Of course, it's going to take a lot more than just saying that this is what we want to do for it to happen. But the United States, other than signing on to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, has not lived up to that treaty and has not been operating in good faith, and we want them to. So the bill this session is H.R. 1976. Carol and I are on our way up to Washington, D.C. to attend the Alliance for Nuclear Accountability D.C. days. You mentioned those, the Alliance for Nuclear Accountability, in your talk. And we are taking letters from constituents with us to hand deliver. And if any of you would be interested in writing a letter even tonight, or you can send one to us and for us to deliver for you, we would be interested.
Do you need the physical, 8.5 by 11 letter, or can one be emailed to you?
Well, it's preferable if we have the actual signed letter, but if it comes down to it. But we have an address in Washington, D.C. that people can send letters to. before, we're gonna be there the 15th to the 22nd.
Is the address in here?
No, I will give it to you right now, if anybody's interested, or you, if you sign that petition, tonight I can send out the information about how you can do that. So.
And we're also going to give you an internet connection where you can get the address.
Yeah, and if you go to prop1.org, which is all over every place here, that is the main site for what we call Proposition 1 campaign, which is, Proposition 1 is let's get rid of nuclear weapons and convert the war machines to provide for human needs. There's a link to a Roots Action page there, which also there's a link here to it. Let's see, you open up the front, and it's down at the very bottom. And that Roots Action page has a letter that you can send as is, or you can edit it to your representative. So if you're not able to send us the actual physical letter, you can also send the letter that way, and should do it whether you do the other one or not, because they're adding up. We now have 10,800 and some letters that have been signed since we first put the Roots Action letter up, thanks to David Swanson, who was here recently. Okay. I think that's all that I have to say right now. Carol is the expert on international efforts to abolish nuclear
I'm
weapons.
not really an expert on anything, but I'm passionate and I care and I'm focused.